everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Emma, and if you're not new here, it is time for another monthly reading wrap up. I'm very excited to be wrapping up everything I read in August because it was a very good reading month for me. If you've been watching a lot of my recent videos, you may know that I've kind of been in and out of a reading slump, mostly throughout the summer, but I feel like August was the month that I finally fully got pulled out of the reading slump. But before I jump into the books, let's do some quick stats. I read 6 books, and with those books combined, it was 3,643 pages, which is kind of insane considering it was only 6 books, but a lot of these are thicker books. All of the books I read in August were romance, which I don't think has ever happened in one month before. And out of these 6 books, 3 of them were 5-star reads, which also does not happen in one month very often. So in no particular order, let's get into the books I read. I read the 3rd book in the Twisted series by Anna Huang, Twisted Hate. This is the one that I often hear people say is their favorite in the series, but I still prefer the second one, Twisted Games, over this one. I did listen to this on audiobook because these are really long books, and if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. Romance, like general romance books, should not be longer than 300 pages, just in my opinion. And so the audiobook definitely helped me get through this a lot quicker than I would have if I was reading it physically. This book follows Josh and Jules. It's a little enemies to lovers situation, but it's also best friend's brother, which was a really interesting mix of tropes. It also had like a little bit of workplace romance going in there. And I think my favorite part about these books is that they all have kind of mystery crime elements going on in them. I'm not going to explain exactly what that was in this book because it would be spoilers, but all of the books in the series have kind of had these underlying plots of like mystery and like, I don't think action's the right word, but it's a little bit more than just a romance. And this book is very, very spicy. I wouldn't say this series as a whole is like my favorite ever, but I am glad I read them because they're really easy to get through. They're like great palate cleansery books. Like I'm not gonna be thinking about this all the time, but it's so fun and so entertaining when I am reading it. I ended up giving this just a 3 out of 5 stars. Like I said, not my favorite thing in the whole world, but not bad by any means. It just is exactly what it sounds like when I describe it to you. Fast-paced, entertaining, smutty. Then I finished out the Twisted series with Twisted Lies. This one follows Stella and Christian. Stella is like an influencer blogger, which I thought was a really fun touch to the story. And then Christian, the main male character, is like a security guy, and he's also really rich. It's kind of hard to explain his occupation, but as I was reading it, it made sense. This one was kind of Grumpy Sunshine. I wouldn't say it was quite enemies to lovers, but it was kind of dislike to lovers. I really enjoyed particularly the female main character and her character development. Once again, extremely spicy, doesn't take a lot of brain power to read. Basically everything I just said about the other Twisted book applies for this one. I also gave this 3 out of 5 stars. And I feel like there's not really much else to say about it. Then I read the 5th installment of Heartstopper. I read books 1 through 4, I think, all in July, and I absolutely adore this series with my whole heart. Nick and Charlie feel like real people, and I just love them so much. If you don't know, Heartstopper is a YA romance, but it's written as a graphic novel. So like, for example, it's pictures and then just dialogue, which until I read this, I really didn't think this would be the type of book I would enjoy. I initially picked it up because I was looking for something fast-paced, and I was shocked with how connected I felt to the characters, even though you're just getting dialogue. I just get really sucked into these stories. I fly through them, but it's not because they're quick reads, it's because I'm so invested in what's happening. And I just think Alice Oseman is a genius. It is so easy to adore these characters and care about what's happening in their lives. I will say though, I gave this one the lowest rating out of all the other Heartstopper books. I gave this a 3.75 out of 5, which I feel like is still really good. Most of the other books I think I gave somewhere between 4 and 4.5 stars, but something about this one just didn't hit quite the same way. I read this in a recent reading vlog, which I'll link up here somewhere if you want to go check it out. And I was talking about my rating and explaining how I felt like there wasn't a lot going on in the plot of this, and then the last 50 to 100 pages, so much happened, and I kind of wish that would have been more spread out because it was just so anticlimactic the majority of the book. Like, I still enjoyed it because I could read about Nick and Charlie doing literally anything, but just compared to the other books in this series, it wasn't quite as good, but I still really enjoyed it. And I highly recommend this whole series. These books are just so cute and heartfelt, and I'm emotionally attached to all of these characters. I've also watched the TV show on Netflix, which is so good. So if you read these, definitely watch the show after, because it's just so fun to watch these characters come to life, and the casting is spot on. These books just make me so happy. So like, if you're in the mood for something that's gonna make you giggle and have butterflies and kick your feet, you could not pick up a better book for that than the Heartstopper series. Moving on to the last 3 books I read in the month of August. I don't know if I'm prepared to talk about these because they literally ripped my heart out and put my heart back together and then ripped it apart again. And then that was like a cycle over and over throughout all 3 of these books. And the books I'm talking about are books 3 through 5 in the Boys of Tommen series. I read the first 2, Binding and Keeping 13, back in March, I believe. Absolutely fell in love with them. 5 stars for both of those. And I had been putting the rest of them off simply because I love this series so much that I didn't want it to be over. But I finally picked up Saving Six, which, like I said, is book 3, but this follows Joey and Aoife. If you don't know what Boys of Tommen is about, essentially it's a sports romance, but it's not a sports romance. Like, it's not your typical light, cute, fluffy, rom-com-y sports romance. It's like if you took a sports romance and then made it the most emotional thing you've ever read. I also always say I don't know how to classify the age range for these books because the characters in here are teenagers, but the topics discussed and the subject matters are very much adult and even at times hard to read. That's how intense it is. The first 2 books were following Johnny and Shannon, and then this book follows Joey, who is Shannon's older brother, and his girlfriend Aoife. This takes place in Ireland, which is really cool, but kind of takes a little bit to get used to the slang and lingo that they're using. It's really hard to explain the plot of this without giving away spoilers, especially because this and the book after this overlap a little bit with the first 2 books. All I can say is read these books. They're so good. And really the story itself, there's nothing that crazy happening. Actually, that's a lie. A lot of crazy things happen, but like plot-wise, it's very much slice of life, except their lives are complicated. I don't know. I think I need to stop rambling and trying to explain it because I genuinely don't think I'm making any sense. But if anything about this sounds interesting to you, I highly urge you to read this series. I did rate this 5 stars if you hadn't guessed already. And I also annotated like little quotes throughout it. The way Chloe Walsh has written these characters, just, I don't know what it is, but I'm obsessed with this world and all these characters and just everything about the Boys of Tommen series. I will say, if you are gonna read this, please look up trigger warnings. Like I said, there are some very heavy, serious topics discussed, and the things that happen to these characters are definitely intense. I do think Chloe Walsh has all of the trigger warnings listed in the front of the book, so definitely read those before you jump into this. Another fun thing that Chloe Walsh puts in all these books is a glossary that explains like all of the Irish terms and what they mean, and also a name pronunciation guide, which is really helpful because the female main character in this, for example, Aoife, her name is spelled Aoife, and to an American that would be like Aoife, but it's pronounced Aoife. And I'm so thankful that the name pronunciations were in the front because that's just one of the examples of kind of the confusing names. And then also in the back of all the books, Chloe Walsh has put playlists for her characters, which was really fun because you can actually go on Spotify and just look up like Saving Six playlist. And so many people have put together playlists using the songs Chloe Walsh included. And I just thought that was like a fun touch to the book, even though these really aren't fun books. I'm gonna stop with this one. 5 stars. I could go on forever about this series. Then I continued it with Redeeming Six, and this was a long book, but I was so invested in it that I think I finished it in 2 or 3 days. I also annotated parts in this one, and I cried so much in Saving Six, but triple the amount of crying from Saving Six, that's how much I cried in Redeeming Six. I can't even explain anything about this book other than it's a continuation of Joey and Aoife's story. But if I literally tried to explain one thing, I would give away so much about this book. This was also a 5 stars. I was sobbing. I loved it so much. The character development that we see in Joey in this book is probably some of the best character development I've ever read. I think I loved this even more than Saving Six. I did rate it 5 out of 5 stars, but to me it's more like a 6 star. I think about these characters on the daily. Then I read the most recent release in the Boys of Tommen series, which is Taming Seven. This one follows a new couple, which is Claire and Gibbsy. Gibbsy is the best friend of Johnny from the first book, and Claire is the best friend of Shannon from the first book. And we've been getting glimpses at the dynamic between these two since book 1, and I've been so excited, so ready to get to this book. And this came out very recently, and since it got released, I've been seeing people all over the internet complaining about this book and saying it was a letdown and saying they'd been so excited for Claire and Gibbsy's story and that this was not good. I don't know if I read a different book from everyone else, but I thought this was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. I was not let down by it at all. If anything, this was even better than I expected. And it's just beautiful to see not only the romance between them, but this like foundation of friendship that they've been building their whole lives. And the end, I was genuinely shocked with the plot twist. And it had me sobbing my eyes out. Like, this might have been the most I've cried in any of these books. Actually, that's gotta be a lie. I probably cried the most in Keeping 13. I don't know. I cry in all of them. I can't decide which one I cried most in, but this one really got me. Again, with the trigger warnings, it's not light and fluffy. These are very heavy, very emotional reads, but I love them for that. If you've read these, specifically Taming Seven, please comment below and let me know your thoughts on it, because I feel like I just keep seeing so many bad reviews and I'm genuinely confused, because to me, this was a masterpiece. This is a 5-star read, like I said, but more of a 6-star read. I am also thinking about Claire and Gibbsy on the daily, and I need the next book to come out. I don't even think Chloe Walsh has announced the title of the next book. I assumed that we would get another Something 7 book that continues Claire and Gibbsy's story, but honestly, the way this ended could be a wrap-up of their story. I've been seeing some things that people are speculating the next Boys of Tommen book will follow a different couple and not Claire and Gibbsy, and I'm torn between what I want to happen, because I could keep reading about Claire and Gibbsy for forever, but at the same time, the other couple that's being speculated about, I really want to get to their story because they intrigue me a lot. I'd be happy with it either way. I just want the next book here now. And those are all the books I read in the month of August. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and also let me know what you want to see me read next. You can also go ahead and check out my September TBR. I'll link it up here, but it's also posted on the profile if you guys would be interested in seeing what's on my radar for the current month. And if you'd be interested in following me on any of my other platforms, I do have my TikTok, Instagram, and Goodreads linked in the description below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and that's all for now. Bye, guys!